Hello, neighbors. This is Chris Salata with Behind Ears Podcast, and I also own over at Saratoga Springs, and you're listening to my DVC Points.
Parents and the children could have fun together.
Please board quickly and safely. Our monorail will be departing momentarily.
Welcome to the My DVC Points podcast. Join the conversation as DVC members share their stories, personal preferences, and magical memories. Your reservation is confirmed, your fast passes are booked. Pull up on the yellow strap because our journey into the magic of membership is about to begin.
To infinity and beyond.
Now, here's your host and curator of magical stories, Chad Pennycuff.
Welcome home, neighbors, to episode 291 of the My DVC Points podcast. In today's show, we're doing something unique, and we're taking a listener question. I had Nick Kaufman reach out to me via email and ask some questions. I started to reply back an email, and I thought to myself, you know what? These are some really good questions, and I think that'd make a really great show. So let's just bring in Nick Kaufman. So welcome to the show. Nick, how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm well, Chad. Yourself?
Oh, I cannot complain. I'm looking forward to sitting down and talking DVC and answering questions here. And so where are you at in your DVC journey, Nick?
I am getting ever closer to purchasing our first contract, just kind of down to does direct and those extra benefits make sense for me and my family? And am I going to feel like if I don't go direct, am I going to miss out on those and or being able to book any new resorts that Disney DVC comes out with?
Okay. So you're pretty comfortable with DVC as a product then, right?
Believe so.
Okay. So you kind of got the points, banking, borrowing, booking, and you've looked at availability. Do you kind of understand that?
Yeah, gone through your website and affiliate links to DVC Help and others to understand point charts and where those availability charts look like for booking outside of my home resort and level of room that we're looking at most of the time in the months, weeks that we go. The rooms are available with 14 plus days or at minimum 3 to 9 days. So.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So you've used our buddy Pete Scheidell's site over there at DVC Help. The availability charts, cannot speak highly enough of them for people doing their research on looking for a contract and helping find what you want to buy. After I started looking at all that data, I was like, wait a minute. I don't want to go to Beach Club in January or February when it might not be warm enough to use the pool. And in summer, when I want to go, a 1 or a 2 bedroom is readily available right at 7 months. So why am I going to own Beach Club when I can 7 month into it? And it helped me sell my Beach Club, if that makes sense to you, when it was time to start amputating contracts. So yeah, that's some really good stuff. Now, do you consider your home park Walt Disney World or Land?
Walt Disney World for sure. Have never been to Land.
Oh, you're missing out. But yeah, you'll have to be able to 7 month over some points there, either to Grand Cal or VDH, whichever route you end up going here. But can't speak highly enough of going to the Land. It is just a neat little tiny, tight, compact experience with, I don't know, they think they've got 1 or 2 less attractions than we have in the entire world, but it all fits in the parking lot of Magic Kingdom. It's really nice and compact. But
yeah, I'm hoping DVC can get me there and my family there. So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's tackle this first question here, direct versus resale. When you're looking at this, Nick, how do you evaluate the upside of buying direct?
I evaluate the upside of buying direct a couple ways. One, direct member benefits. I'll always be able to book any new resort that Disney comes out with, unless they change something. I can split up the contract, and listening to some of your older podcasts, that's a big deal, especially with 2 young daughters that I have and legacy and passing those along eventually. So it just allows me a few more options. And then also the extra member perks of getting into some of the lounges and other things that I feel like we would use when we're at the parks.
Well, the lounges are really nice, but considering that you're going to save thousands of dollars, I think you got money to buy a Coke in an air-conditioned room someplace in one of the parks, okay? But I'm not going to tell you they're not nice, right? They're really nice. But that's essentially what it is. It's a Coke freestyle machine and some Cheez-Its in a nice air conditioned room, which you can find Coke and snacks and various different places there. And you just have to ask yourself how much you're going to use that. I would say every trip, at least in every trip to the land, you'll use it. And then on days in Epcot, I find that it closes a little early for me because it closes at like 6 p.m. over there. So that they just have to have one shift of workers. Of course, I'm buzzing over after work, so I'm not really there during the day. But even then, my favorite times at Epcot are at night when it cools down when I was commuting back and forth to Walt Disney World, right? So, okay, so you got the lounges. What about annual passes? Do you guys buy passes now? Are you interested in annual passes?
We don't buy annual passes now, only because right now we probably only come to Walt Disney World every 3 years or something like that. This is something that we're looking for our family to be able to come more often. And so that might spark the annual pass buying portion of this, which obviously with a family of 4, the difference between the savings of direct versus not at $500 per person, it's $2,000 is a big expense.
Yeah. It definitely is a huge expense because you're probably looking at $4,000 for 4 people to get annual passes. Now you're probably spending $500-$600 per visit anyways on park tickets. So if you could do something what I call annual pass looping, let's say you want to come in March one year and you buy your annual passes. If you use your next set of points in February, right before your annual passes expire, you can kind of get 2 trips on one annual pass, wait 13 months, buy the annual pass all over again, and restart the process. And that's what we did when we lived in Michigan. And it really kind of worked out well for us because that year that your annual pass is up, you're kind of tempted to sneak down here for a quick weekend or 2 here and there, right? So that's kind of like bonus gravy. And for those of you who are new to the show, I consider annual passes the gateway drug for add-on-itis. And I say that because once you get an annual pass, you want to come more. And in order to come more, you need more points. And so it just kind of becomes this little gateway drug loop that you get into with the annual passes. But that being said and done, being able to get the Sorcerer Pass or the second tier down from the top, that's quite a bit of savings. You're talking about $500 a person per year for that savings. So if you do buy annual passes for a family of 4, we're looking at $2,000 savings versus buying the Sorcerer one. Now, if you compare it to, well, we were only going to spend $600 and come every year and have a little bit more flexibility, you kind of diminish the savings a little bit. You follow me?
Follow, definitely. Yeah, we're spending probably about $500 or so per person now when we come down on passes or tickets to the park. So it would have to be, are we going to come again or are we going to make a couple trips down to really make the annual pass worth it? So.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because the other thing is there's a nice discount for things on annual passes, but if you've already got the blue card anyways, you're still getting all the annual pass discounts in terms of benefits because they're almost identical between annual pass holder and DVC. Maybe there's a few more for annual pass holders than there are us. And if you're coming to Walt Disney World and you're staying on property, you get free parking anyways. So that parking from the annual pass is kind of off the table. Okay, so next big major benefit we're looking at would be Moonlight Magics. Have you guys considered coming to those? Have you looked at the calendars of those? Would that be something you would make a special trip for?
I've read into the Moonlight Magics. I haven't actually looked at the calendar, but they sound extremely interesting. And I do think that's something that if we were on our trip or planning our trip or looking further out, maybe we could plan a trip around those just to see if we could get the invite to one of those.
Okay, so that's fair enough. Because I mean, here on our team at My DVC Points, we're a little divided. I'm team, I would make a trip for it. And I know Gina and a few other people on our team are like, nah, I'm not making a trip for Moonlight Magic. That's kind of crazy. And I'm like, well, I think they're fun just hanging out with other DVC members. Everybody in the park is either a DVC member or they're friends with a DVC member. Because the other cool part about those is you get to bring your friends in. And you can say, hey, let's come play at Disney for 4 or 5 hours one night, get some free snacks. And hey, I don't have to pay for it because I've already bought my membership. kind of free to me. So here they are free to you. And really neat event and experience. I can't say enough great things about them. And in my mind, it's a sway over to buy direct. It is a huge, huge, huge benefit. And then you also mentioned the ability to stay any kind of future resorts. So I would have you look at this and go, of the classic 14 resorts, do you think you'd be able to get by in that?
Yeah, that's kind of where my decision is like swaying one way or the other. I think the answer to that is most likely, yeah, we could get by in the original 14. Obviously, you have the one in Disneyland, the Grand California, you have Alani, and all the rest in Walt Disney World. Is it a bummer that we can't stay at Riviera? I guess it looks beautiful, but for the cost difference, right? And it's a big difference, direct versus same amount of points resale. Is it worth that money? And I guess that's kind of where I'm at. And if anything new comes out from Disney, whether it's the Poly Tower, but I believe that's in the existing covenants and condo, so there shouldn't be any restrictions on that.
Yeah, you should be able to book the new Poly Tower. As far as we know, that's going to be the same condo association as the existing one. And so that's fair game for you to book with resale points, which is kind of a beautiful thing as well. The other thing I would tell you is I don't think the market is quite there yet, but my prediction is we will be coming up with member-to-member swaps where you'll be able to trade points with somebody who bought a resale Riviera and go, hey, I'll book you your vacation on my points. You book me one at your home resort on yours or one of the other 14 resorts. And you kind of settle up for any kind of point differences, or if you want to call the point differences out or however. I think that's going to be a thing of the future, because the one thing that we know about the entrepreneurs that are around Disney Vacation Club, such as our sponsors, DVC Rental Store, DVC Resale Market, is they are always working to come up with a new creative product to come back in and meet member needs. So they do a phenomenal job over there with the rental market today. Can't say enough great things about their rental store there, helping members rent their points out, doing other kinds of crazy swaps. I could easily see where they could create a swap program where you could take your restricted resale points and somehow swap into that. You know, I can't say that I've heard that they're working on that for sure. This is all speculative, but it's not out of the question that I could see them coming back in and coming up with a product like that, because I just know how creatively awesome they are over there. So that's just kind of my take on it, right?
Yeah, that sounds like a beautiful product if they can bring that to fruition. So would definitely make this decision probably a lot easier in saving the tens of thousands of dollars resale versus direct.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll probably just send this show over to them and go, hey, y'all need to prioritize this if you're not already doing it. And because you're right, if they could come back into it and they could say, hey, yeah, you can't book it yourself directly, but we've got our own little insider club here from our customers, and we'll able to match you up or do a point swap or do something along those lines and hook you up. And so if you want to try Riviera, you can. If you want to try the new villas at Disneyland Hotel, you can, or the cabins or whatever new place they come up with next. I mean, I've heard Reflections is getting resurrected out of the buried in dirt pile from COVID, and they're kind of coming up with their permits again to start working on that. So yeah, whatever Disney comes up with, I can tell you there's going to be an entrepreneur that comes in here and solves that problem and with a workaround. So I know it's probably not helping you any because you're in this situation. Do I go direct? Do I do this? Now, Nick, have you considered just, well, let me start off with this question. What style room do you think you're looking at? Studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, grand villas?
Worst case, we're looking at 1 bedrooms for my wife and I and our 2 kids. My mother and stepfather are huge Disney fans. They love to go. A lot of trips when we do go, they'll come along with. And obviously we have multiple rooms and we're staying at the All-Star. So when they would come, it's definitely a 2 bedroom. And then if any other extended family members would want to come, then, you know, we're looking at a 3 bedroom, right? So
yeah, definitely. 3 bedrooms are an option. Most people don't realize you can book 2 bedrooms cheaper than you can book 1 grand villa. And so if you really need the space and are doing that many people, you can get a lot more bedrooms and elbow room, but it's not as grand, right? I guess that's why they call it the grand villa. But so, okay. So how many points have you looked at buying then? What's kind of on your point radar?
I think we're settling right in that 300 point range, give or take maybe 50 points, but probably take those.
Probably 300 then, right?
Yeah, 300 sounds, based on looking at the point charts, what the costs are of the one or the two bedrooms, depending upon the times that we go. That's kind of the sweet spot, it looks like. So,
okay. Now, are you considering like Grand Flow type prices? Are you looking at Saratoga, Old Key West type prices, or some of the moderately priced ones? What kind of resorts are striking your fancy here?
Yeah, I've kind of looked at them all to give myself a level of where those point values lie and what would I need to do with banking and borrowing in any certain year to be able to afford or have enough points to get into, whether it is the Grand Flow or if it's only, say, the Boulder Ridge or Copper Creek. That 300 is pretty much about a year's worth of points in a given time frame. Want to stay at Bay Lake Tower and have that theme park view, and I know I'm going to need at least a couple years points with 300 on that. So
yeah, okay. So yeah, 300 sounds like a great starter thing for you here as well. Because the other thing that I would have you look at is, what if we were to pick up 150 direct to get the blue card and then add on 150 resale with a matching use year, maybe matching home resort, maybe not, depending on if you want to have dual home resorts. But that would be a really good solution because you're just going to get enough to get your feet wet for the blue card, but then you can always come back in and pick up the resale later. The flip side of that is if you buy the resale first and you wait a year, if you don't like it for whatever reason after trying it, you can pretty much sell it for almost what you've got into it. You're going to have some closing costs in there and the market might have shifted up or down a little bit, but you're going to get a vacation out of the deal. So I think you're going to break even if you just buy resale and keep it for a year and then resell it. That'll get your feet wet on this as well. And I would not go higher than 200 on resale for myself because I don't want to have to be selling a 200 plus contract on the resale market. They just take longer to sell and you're going to get less per point. Now you're paying less per point for it now, but that's kind of an option. Have you considered the dual track method here?
I have, and then kind of where I get stuck, or at least in my mind where I get stuck on it is, then it would most likely be a multiple home resort contracts. And I guess I kind of like in my mind, how do I navigate that? There is the option that they are selling some 2057 Old Key West points.
Those are on a smoking good sale right now. Those 2057 Old Key West, even if you buy them direct. Like I've looked at the promo chart on it recently because somebody in our Facebook group posted that they were looking at buying, I think it was 300 or 500 points and they were getting it for 105. And we all kind of went, what? And then I talked to my guide and I got the sheet on it. And it was like, sure enough, if you buy 500 points with the incentives on that and then selling back your first year of points for $20 a point, she was getting it for 105. And I was like, holy cow, like we have to do a show on this. And then I had to head out of town for 2 weeks. And well, I'll probably record it this weekend or as soon as I can get a hold of Ron to do my direct incentives insight show. But that's always an option for you as well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what home resort priorities you're really looking at.
Yeah, I've kind of looked at that and I'm not sure. Obviously, I think as far as getting direct and getting the blue card, that's the most economical option. And so my thing is then, okay, do I go and buy the same Old Key West and add the points there? And then it's easier for me to navigate that or versus having two different home resorts. I did talk to a guide earlier today, and he did say there's a restriction on those points above 249, that you'll get the discount or the credit up to 249. And then after that, it's full point value.
Really?
That's what he told me today.
Wow, they must have came back in and modified that or clarified that. So, okay, let me just look at that. They did modify that. So, because the PDF that was there is no longer there anymore. Interesting. And what I bet happened was, I mentioned this to my guide, was Randy, you could easily buy 500-600 points, a huge contract, use them for a year, rent them for a year, and then sell them and get your money back, because that's where the market's at 105 a point on these Old Key West extended now. So I could buy more than I need just to come back in and get the huge discounts and then sell it later. And I think he might have passed that feedback on. So that's just kind of the way I crazily think, Nick, is.
I love it. I love it.
I'm going to work the angles and get the best deal possible, right? That's kind of who I am and the way I do this. So, yeah, so Old Key West, definitely an option there for 249 points, or buying the 250 and paying full price for that 1 point. That might be an option for you as well. And if you were going to look at resale today, what resorts are looking appealing towards you?
In the resale markets, just I think with the point values and how many points that I'm looking at, obviously Boulder Ridge, it's very economical, but again, I know it's ending in 2042, so that's always kind of in the back of my mind, but is that a good starter to kind of get my feet wet within this world of DVC? Loving the Bay Lake Tower point charts right now and what that looks like, and also looking at, there was one other one in there and I'm going to draw a blank right now.
Was it Copper Creek?
No, it didn't seem like Copper Creek was as good of a value,
because it's right there. It's right there at about the 130s in the points, and it's got the longest life left of any unrestricted one out there.
Mm-hmm.
You're still talking 40 some odd years of points. My take on buying a 2042 is, with young kids and you wanting to pass it on, no. Like, just to be brutally honest with you, because I don't think those points per price yet are fully reflective of the years left on the contract. I think the reality of them going away in 17 years is starting to kick in, but it's not quite there when you see Boulder Ridge priced at 105 and 130 for Copper Creek. And it's really the same resort, but you've got another 25 years on the Copper Creek one. Like that's just not computing to me, right? It's like paying $1 per year more for the Copper Creek point than it is the Boulder Ridge point. So I don't think the market's fully reflected the reality of that yet, but I think it's coming. I think it's starting to set in. And I'm still loving Bay Lake Tower for the simple fact that you've still got 30 some odd years, almost 40 years left of life there. And it's a tower. It's got really efficient. The operational costs of operating that tower are extremely efficient, and the point charts are higher. And the higher the point charts for the resorts, the more points there are to spread out those operational costs for, so you get a lower cost per due. That's one of the downsides to Old Key West, is you don't have as many points in the resorts to spread out the operational cost. And it's huge individual buildings, and staff have to drive the golf carts in between buildings and all of that other kind of fun stuff. And all that is just more expense for you, the owner. So if you're looking for a low get-in cost, Old Key West might not be that bad. If you're looking for a long-term one, I'd be focusing on the dues. That's kind of my take on it.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
The other benefit is if you buy resale first and you wait a year for that blue card, you can then get existing member discounts, which is usually about $5 or $6 off per point from what the general public gets on any kind of an offering. There's member-only offerings that are they sharpen the pencil a little bit more for members. But within the last few years, they've included a new rule that says you have to be a member for over a year for that discount to kick in. Used to be you could just close on your first resale, turn that around, and then buy your blue card points and get the existing member discount. Now they've said, hey, there's a waiting period, because I guess people were following our advice on that one. So we got to change our advice. Buy it, wait a year.
Makes sense. Yeah, and the other thing with the Old Key West that was kind of throwing a wrench into it, it was an April use year, and so, which really didn't help my September, August, October use years.
Yeah, so just so everybody knows, before we started recording, we pulled up my DVC use year calculator, which I need to get put out there on a website. It's in our Facebook group now. If you go into the My DVC Points community and look for the files, I know not everybody is on Facebook and not everybody's in the group. It's on my agenda to get it out there for the others, but we ran through this, and you rank every month of the year as to how likely you are to go to Disney. And you rank those from every year, every other year, occasionally, rarely, or not even with pixie dust. And when we ran through that deal for you, based on the rules of banking points and canceling vacations and always having bankable points, September came out to be your number one use year. And it was right about what you were thinking, wasn't it?
Yeah, spot on.
Yeah. So when you're doing your research on this, you really need to understand the danger zone the last 3 months of your use year. The 9th month of your use year, even though you have to bank at the end of the 8th month, you can still have a vacation booked in the 9th month. You have to cancel it 30 days in advance in order for those points to be bankable and not go into a holding account. So you've got the first 9 months of your use year that you can book a vacation, cancel it 30 days in advance, and still be able to bank those points. When you get into months 10, 11, and 12, they got to be canceled by the end of the 8th month. Otherwise, you can't bank them. And that's kind of a little bit of a danger zone. So use year does matter. And I highly suggest everybody researching this really, truly understand that they need to start their use year when their vacation period begins, when they're most likely to go, and make sure that the last 3 months of the use year are unlikely. My story is after I bought into DVC, my guide was trying to tell me to buy December. And I was like, no, that's too confusing with the calendar year not matching the use year, whatever. I'm just going to buy February. He's like, Chad, you're making a mistake. And I didn't listen. Then I found out I really like coming on vacations in January and getting out of the Michigan snow and all of that kind of fun stuff. And the point charts are super low in January, which is another reason why I like to come in January. But it's the 12th month of my use year with a February use year. So if I cancel that vacation, I got nowhere. I got like 2 weeks that I can reschedule it in January. It's a mid-January vacation before those points are gone. They just die at the end of the use year. And that's a sad thing that we want to avoid. So we've covered use year, direct versus resale. Nick, how old are your daughters right now?
They are 8 and 5, almost 9 and 6.
Okay. So you've got a good solid 7 to 8 years before the oldest one gets a little bit on the Disney again, Dad stage, because that happened to me at about 16 with my oldest. And my 13-year-old now is still liking to come, and my 10-year-old's all over it. But you just have to know they market this product as vacations you'll never outgrow, but your children will kind of outgrow it. And it's really great for just true blue dyed-in-the-wool Disney fans. And I tell you that, Nick, because the average person stays a DVC member for 7 to 8 years. So if I'm going to be looking at buying direct, I'm going to say if it's $10,000 more to buy direct than resale, how am I going to get that 10 grand back? And how am I going to get it back within 7 years? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So,
it really does.
If I know I could save $2,000 a year on annual passes, and over the course of 7 years, I'm going to buy 4 sets of annual passes using my looping strategy, I can pretty well feel comfortable buying direct knowing I'm going to save it on annual pass costs for my family of 4 through 4 sets of annual passes, right? Plus the other perks and discounts and things along those lines. So if I know I can break even on direct and direct isn't going to break the bank for me, I'm probably going to go direct. If I don't think I am, or I think I might want to exit before 7 to 8 years, which you see all of these listings for villas at Disneyland Hotel, Riviera, even some Grand Flow people, they thought they were going to own this forever, and then life happens and they're selling. And you never can tell. The great news about DVC is we have a phenomenal resale market that's out there, so much that DVC Resale Market pays me to advertise their product for people. And so everywhere I go, I hear, oh, timeshare, I got ripped off, whatever. Really not the case with DVC if you've done your research, because the product holds its value because so many people want to come here and stay on property. And it's a world of difference a mile off property, right? It's just a different experience from being in the Disney bubble to being out of the Disney bubble. And those of us that are listening to the show know this. Other people outside of it, they may not realize that, but it is a definitely different vacation when you're completely inside the bubble and your 14-year-old says, I want to go back to the resort early from the theme park. And she just hops a bus and she's right back at the resort. That's a beautiful thing, Nick. Like that's really a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that would be fine with us. We're definitely Disney lovers as adults. And so we can get on board with that.
Yeah. And then the other part of it is you have to look at it and go, hey, there's going to be college years where the kids might not want to come. Are you okay with coming with this? And are you okay with getting a 2-bedroom for you and another couple coming and kind of splitting it out that way? Like those are the things that run through my mind when I'm starting to come back in and assess points and everything else. Is, are you going to use this when in that transitionary period when your kids are going through college, they want to do their own thing. Then they eventually get married, have kids, and they want you to take them and their kids back to Disney. So that's the cycle, Nick.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, Chad, I'm one of the abused children that you talk about on your show.
Oh, okay.
So I never went to Disney as a kid. The first time I went to Disney, I was 31 years old at the time and was fortunate enough to win some points through a company that I was selling for, and I could buy different things in this catalog. And lo and behold, I could get Disney World tickets, I could get Universal tickets, and this and that. I was able to take my girlfriend, fiance back then, now wife, and my mom and my stepdad the first time, and fell in love with Disney immediately as an adult and just thought it was the coolest thing ever. We could go ride rides, we could go have a few drinks, and it was just, again, I think it was just magical, right? I got to walk down Main Street and hold my mom's hand, and there's a picture, and it was just really awesome. So to your point of, as the kids get older and maybe they don't want to go to Disney, I can tell you, my wife and I, good.
You're all in.
We will still go. We love it.
Okay. That's awesome. So, I mean, I want to do checks like that for people. That's kind of like a reality check, because a lot of times you get into this research mode and people get high on pixie dust. I'm like, that's great. That helps people sell contracts, whatever. But we're a reality show. We tell it like it is here. And that's why people trust our opinion. So I want to do that little check to go, hey, look, yeah, you're a bona fide Disney adult. You're coming here regardless. So
absolutely. Love the escapism down there. So,
I'm 100% in the same way, right? When my kids outgrow Disney, I'm like, that's okay. I'm still going, right? Land, world. Right now, I'm starting to figure out how I'm going to get everybody to all the international parks on credit card points and miles, which is a whole nother discussion. But it looks like Disneyland Paris summer of 2025 is going to happen. And I'm about ready to start pulling some triggers on booking that now if I can find the award tickets about a year out. So I'm almost ready to pounce on that, Nick.
That's excellent. I did want to, as listening to some of your older shows, and then obviously I have listened to Lynn and some of her things. And I know they love the Chase card and whatever. I did just recently find out on my Amex Platinum, there is like the same kind of pay for it with points system on their website after you buy something. And it can be anything, because I just talked to them a few weeks ago. Trips, tickets, doesn't matter what it is. It's like a 2-month window. I don't think the pay per point value is quite as good as Chase's, but it's almost there. So
it's like a 0.6 cent per point cash out kind of a deal. Where you're going to be better off with those Amex points is and I'm actually using Amex points for this. I'll probably transfer them to Air France when they have a transfer bonus up, because it's normally like a 1-to-1 deal, but occasionally Amex runs, hey, for every 1 point that you transfer to Air France, you'll get 1.2 points. And so when that transfer bonus is up, I'm going to move them over there and then book the tickets, because Air France is a partner with Delta. So I could actually book Delta Metal, which is a Delta plane, going from Detroit straight to Charles de Gaulle for our whole family. And it would be cheaper to book it through Air France points than Delta points, although I have some Delta points I could pull that off with there too. So yeah, that's kind of the rundown on that one. Is I would look at the transfer partners there, which Lynn and families fly free. She focuses on Chase and transferring it to Southwest to book the tickets. And you get a little better value that way. With Amex, they don't really have great domestic transfer partners. They've got Delta, and it takes a bazillion Delta miles to get anywhere. Whereas you could, just pulling numbers out of my head, Delta could want 130,000 points for a round trip ticket from Detroit to Paris. Air France would probably charge me 60 or 70,000 for the same exact flight, seat, everything, because they're partners.
Mm-hmm.
And you can book that Delta flight with Air France points. And that's kind of the magic sauce there. But Lynn doesn't really get into the international travel and all of that. She kind of stays domestically. And she's just like, yeah, it's just easier to pay cash for those when I have to go international. And I'm like, that's great if you got the cash, but I don't. I got points. And
same points.
So that's how I'm working it. And she got a great program, got me started over there, but I'm kind of taking it to a little bit different direction. I think she created a monster, but that's okay. So yeah, that's a rabbit to be chased there as well. So what other questions or what other research things do you have that you're looking at on this?
Really just looking for some of that insight in the conversation today, just to kind of talk through what I've been looking at and going over in my mind, and just to kind of have another's opinion on somebody that's been a member and kind of their journey and what they've done. And I know you've done both resale and direct.
And I'm a fan of both.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, after talking with you and getting the feel for where you're at in life, I would definitely recommend the 150 resale. So 100%, because it sounds like you're successful enough in your career that you could afford the direct premium for now. You don't have to do it all. You could buy 150 now and then add on later. That's the other part. You could split this 50-50. You could go all in on direct now. If you do that, you just want to divide it up into smaller contracts so that you're not trying to sell 400-point contract or a 300-point contract, if that's what you're looking at.
Yeah, and that was going to be, if we'd go all in on direct, I would probably split it up into 3 contracts, whether it was an even 100, 100, and 100, or a couple 75s and a 150. I just don't necessarily like all of the direct resorts that they have selling right now. And with the new Poly Tower coming out, I imagine that's got to be on the books here soon. So it's like, how long do I wait for that versus biting the bullet with like a Riviera and then having those resale restrictions down the road if we do end up trying to sell that.
Okay. So I'm avoiding Riviera like the plague. Okay. Simply due to the resale restrictions. It's a great resort. I hear a lot of pushback from Riviera owners, even one trying to tell me, dude, the reason why it's so low in this is you and everybody else just keeps talking about the restrictions. And I'm like, yeah, Disney did a dumb thing. They screwed over all of their members, and I'm going to keep talking about it. And just so that everybody knows, I do have insider knowledge that they have at least considered removing the restrictions. And so, you know what? I'm going to keep talking about it, and I'm going to keep preaching what a dumb thing it was and keep directing everybody to not buy those contracts. So I'm a consumer advocate. That's what I do. And I don't do this to make Riviera owners feel bad about their decision. Look, if that's your resort and you're happy with it, be fine with it. You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, I'll meet you at Bar Riva. We'll have a drink together. Okay. That Il Tormino drink over there is one of my favorite on property. And you don't have to twist my arm to get me to go over there, right? It's a pretty awesome resort. Same thing with the new Disneyland Hotel. I mean, I bought points there, but I bought points there because I knew Grand Cal held its value from people that buy points because they only want to stay there, and they can't drain another swamp in Anaheim and put up another timeshare building. They just don't have the land. So this is likely the last one that they're going to get there. Highly likely. Things could change, whatever, okay? But I still don't think it's going to be all that big of a market there. And I don't think the resale restrictions are going to be as big a deal there as they are here in Walt Disney World. So
yeah, it was kind of a funny decision, and resale members pay the same dues as direct members. So it's kind of like, why are you restricting that? And that was another option I looked at. Was never been to the Disneyland side of this, but do I buy a 150-point contract at Disneyland? And listening to some of your shows, like, to your point, there's not another swamp there for them to drain and not enough land for them to build around. And maybe is that even with the restriction, I consider that more than I considered Riviera.
Yeah. If it's not your home park and you're not going to use the 11-month there consistently, I would not recommend it. What I like about the Poly Tower is we have a known established resale value, just like we had with Grand Flow. So you're going to come into this and you're going to start off the gate and your points are going to be worth $20 to $30 more per point on resale than they are over at Riviera. So, and that's just a proven fact today. The other thing I can tell you is they're opening up cash bookings for that resort for like December 4th, which tells me they're going to start selling that probably June, July, August. So you're going to be able to buy those points and close on that contract sooner than later. Because it's an existing resort, I don't believe you're going to have to wait until opening date to be able to use your points. I could be wrong there, so you're going to have to ask the direct guide that. But because it's an existing resort, I don't think you can. Whereas when like Riviera opened up, you had to wait until Riviera actually opened before you could use your points. Or at least other people could 7 month in or something. There was some kind of a delay. You couldn't book right away because it was too far into the construction. So ask your guide about that because this is a very timely conversation. But what I like about Poly is A, it's not restricted. B, we know what the resale market value is. C, you're on the monorail. Okay. D, you're on the monorail. And E, you're on the monorail. And Poly is one of those resorts that rents exceptionally well for the points. Not as good as Beach Club here in Walt Disney World, but when you could paying rental prices and pay about $400 a night to rent somebody's points versus Disney's $500, $530, renting points there from somebody makes a really sweet option. And what I'm telling you is Nick, that's going to give you the option if you don't want to go to Disney one year, or you can't want to go to Disney one year, or you want to go someplace else one year. The rental market of the points that you buy in the 11-month market for that is huge. The problem that Riviera owners have is the point charts are so incredibly high there that nobody wants to pay that amount to stay there because Disney has lowered the price of the rooms to meet market demand. And so it's almost like it's not a good value of points for the renter to rent points at Riviera. So it's really, really, really hard for people to rent those Riviera points right now. And if they bought it resale, the only thing they can book with it is Riviera. So it's kind of like they're kind of stuck. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that was the other thing about Riviera. While it's close to Hollywood and it's close to Epcot, it's not Boardwalk, it's not Beach Club, it's not you walk out of the park and you're there. You're taking the gondola, and if it's raining, the gondola's down. We really like, I guess, being more in the magic. And to your point, if Poly Tower is coming available here in the next few months, it's like, I think I really would rather wait for that and spend the money there versus spending the money on this and then obviously having the restrictions and whatnot. Chad, in your mind, do you think it makes sense as I navigate this forward? Do I start a resale contract now and then buy into Poly when it's available in a few months?
That you could do because we've seen the resale prices come up since their announcement that it would be the same resort. People are like, well, I could buy resale now and save a boatload of money and still book this new beautiful tower and be on the monorail and all of the other benefits that we talked about. So that's not a bad idea because at that point in time, you can get your resale points now, get something on the books, start to get your feet wet in the DVC system. And then if you want to add on later, you've got the option to add on and buy direct. There's no wrong way to do this unless it just completely doesn't align with your values, right? And
would you consider buying resale at one of the other resorts we talked about, like a Copper Creek or a Bay Lake Tower, and then adding direct from the Poly Tower when it opens?
I don't think that's a bad idea at all either, right? Because again, I come from a perspective of multiple home resorts is a beautiful thing. Because there's times when you might want to come to a Run Disney weekend or something like that, and having multiple home resorts is like having two arrows in your quiver. Right now, you've got two places you can come in and shoot for, especially for those like one-off high popular weekends like Run Disney or whatever else, where you're not necessarily bringing the whole family. So you want a studio, which is ultra competitive. So if I know I could come back in and have 300 plus studios to get at the Poly, I'm pretty good. I can probably get one of those, right? But if I can't and I could go over to Bay Lake and get one, that'd be even better. So I look at it from the standpoint of I can get my toes in the water at 11 months on either contract, and then I can come back in and add on to it later. So like, let's say I wanted a 2-bedroom at Bay Lake Tower for a week. I didn't want to borrow points to come in and pull this off. So this is what I would end up doing. If I wanted a 2-bedroom at Bay Lake for an entire week, but I only had a points for, say, 3 nights, and I had to use my poly points for the other nights, I'm going to book the first 3 nights that I can with my Bay Lake points at the 11-month mark. As I approach the 7-month window, I'm going to rebook those nights, hopefully at the 7-month with the poly points, and then I'm going to move the Bay Lake points to the back end of the trip. Because you can book farther back because you're an owner, you're still in the 11-month window. Like the second half of that vacation, still in the 11-month window. And I'm going to slowly sneak that thing back while the poly points come up to the front.
Got it. Okay.
So I'm going to be leveraging both the 7-month and the 11-month window. Now, I might have 2 different reservations. Member services may or may not be able to merge them, whatever. Okay. I'm not too worried about that. They don't want to have you move rooms because they don't want to clean the room again. So if you came to the resort and said, hey, I have the same 2-bedroom Lakeview booked, it's the same family. We're not really checking out that day. Just tell the housekeeping that they're off the hook that day. Okay. We're not moving our stuff. We're checking in, checking out the same day. I'm sure hotel operations would be glad to accommodate you so that they didn't have to pay to clean the room midweek.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's how I'm kind of playing it. I see multiple home resorts as a beautiful thing. So for example, when I was doing mine, I figured out that like 300 to 350 points was about my ideal. And that's because I was looking at staying at Beach Club Boardwalk, Copper Creek, Boulder Ridge, and even the standard view rooms at Bay Lake Tower at the time were 354 points per week in the summer when I wanted to come. So I bought 175 points at multiple different resorts because then I could bank and borrow and get my week of 350 off of that. And I could bank and borrow and book 11-month this resort this time, bank and borrow, get the 11-month next resort the next time. So I'm a big fan of multiple home resorts for 11-month, but I don't mind playing the booking games and doing that. Some people just want to come back in, book it, be done with it and go. So it really depends on your values there. Are you comfortable with that? Are you comfortable with the split stay if you get stuck with it?
Yeah, very comfortable with that. I never really thought about, I guess, having the multiple home resorts. And it really, I guess if I can line up the use years, shouldn't be too difficult.
Well, Direct will sell you whatever use share you want.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, if you have an existing resale use share, they'll do everything in their power to talk you into buying the exact same use share. And 95% of the times, it's the right decision. Where it's not is if you were coming back in to buy another contract to say I come to the January Run Disney event and I'm looking to buy this points just to book that Run Disney event every year. And so I would get a use share right before that. And because that's how you're planning on using your points. The reason why they have you do that is it's a complete pain to have to call member services and transfer points from one contract to the other and then them book it. And even then, at the 11-month or 7-month window, everybody that can do it themselves online has an hour jump on you. And you can't do it until member services opens up at 9:00. So there's a little bit of a competitive disadvantage for not being able to do it yourself, but it's still doable.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you have any other questions or anything you want to talk about with me today, Nick?
No, I think this is really going to help me and my family along in our journey here. And you've given us a lot to think about. And we just appreciate what you do for the community, Chad. Like I said, I just found your show recently, but I'm probably more than halfway through all of your episodes, and they get better and better each one I listen to. So thank you for what you do and all the team there. Really appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. On behalf of the whole team here, we appreciate the feedback, and our heartbeat is do your research, make an informed decision about what's best for your family, listen to the guides, but also listen to real members and real owners that use this product day in and day out. Their tips, their tricks, their feedback is what will help you really learn to optimize this membership so that you can make a decision as to what's best for your family. Because that's really what we talk about here. And that's the heartbeat of our show is we want you to be happy with whatever decisions that you do. And the key to that is making decisions that align with your values. So if you're not a land person, stay away from Disneyland Hotel, okay? When you occasionally want to go out there, which I highly recommend you do, 7-month and waitlist it, it'll come through. Sooner or later, right? You'll find something out there. It has to happen. You might have to go a little bit bigger room than you want, or you might have to get the preferred view as opposed to the standard view, whatever, but definitely come back in and try that out there as well. So thanks so much for joining us today, Nick, and huge shout out of thanks to our sponsors over at DVC Resale Market, DVC Rental Store, and Monera Financial. Can't say enough great things about them and how they serve our listener community. If it wasn't for them serving you guys with excellence, we wouldn't have them as sponsors of our show. But because we get great feedback from our community members and our listeners at how they're treated over there, we love having them as sponsors. And here's a little secret. They really like our listeners as well because you guys are like Nick, you're doing your research, you're listening in, you're tuning in, you're asking great questions. And when you call them up, you guys are ready to do business and they love getting our listeners. DVCResaleMarket.com. They are the world's leader in DVC resales. Also like to do a huge shout out of thanks to all of our Patreon supporters. Your guys' monthly contributions help me buy cameras, lights, upgrade computers, do all of the little tiny extra things that really just help elevate the platform and take us to the next level. Thank you so much for all of your support. And as always, guys, hopefully you learned something from today's episode that'll help you go out there and plan something magical for your family. If you're like Nick and you've got questions, I highly suggest you reach out to our partners over at DVC Resale Market. But if you really want my opinion, shoot me an email at mydvcpoints@gmail.com and we'll see if we can't take your questions and make it into a show. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Have a great night.
Ladies and gentlemen, please watch your head and step as you exit, and take small children by the hand.
Aw, chill up, Dad. You know I'll come back. With DVC.
My DVC Points is an unofficial Disney-inspired podcast created by fans of Disney Vacation Club. The thoughts expressed in this podcast are personal opinions and personal experiences. My DVC Points is not affiliated with Disney Vacation Club, the Walt Disney Companies, or any subsidiaries. We encourage listeners to contact their DVC guide or member services for official DVC policies.